I want to buy a copy of Bone Storm. Here's 99 cents.
Allow me to summarize the proposed transaction. You wish to purchase Bone Storm for 99 cents. Net profit to me, negative $59. Oh, please take my $59. I don't want it. It's yours.
Welcome back to the Thinking Critical Comic Book Podcast. This is the podcast for comic book collectors, Slabbed and Raw, episode number 3. Got the guys back together. We're going to talk about a host of topics. First up, we've got the co-host of Slabbed and Raw, the critical curmudgeon himself. Pele, how you doing?
Pretty good. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Here it's beautiful. I don't know what the fuck it is everywhere else, but it looks nice here, and everybody's going to get together to eat here in a little while. But right now we're going to talk about comic books, and we're going to have a really good time. So
absolutely. Next up, Uel is waiting for some baseball. He's making some time for us during the season. How you doing, Uel?
I'm great. Things are looking up. It is a nice day out here. It's in the morning still, 7:30, but it's looking to be a good Father's Day, and I'm gonna have to call my dad after also.
Yeah. Absolutely. Who's your team, Uel?
Some team. Figure it out. For those of you on the audio, it is the Los Angeles.
That's why I said that.
I was gonna just say Brooklyn.
Not the Nets.
All right, last up, we've got Doc. How you doing, Doc?
I'm great. I'm sitting here killing time, rebagging comics while everybody was sitting there talking about bad 90s sitcoms.
Bad?
Yes.
What the hell? Bad.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about comics because that's what we're here for.
That's right.
All right, well, Pele, you are in the heat of all this stuff. There's many things going on in the comic book collecting market. Prices are skyrocketing. We've got all these speculators coming in. Has comic book collecting almost become a rich man's game? Are they weeding out the people with lesser means? And is it right?
Man, I used to argue this point all the time with customers that no, it isn't. No, it's not a rich man's game. Anybody can get into it. You just need some gumption and patience and holy shit, man! That is really getting thin right now. That excuse is really getting thin. And Marvel Spotlight number 5. Everybody knows Ghost Rider's first appearance. Super hard to find in high grade. I mean, just biblically difficult to find at all. And damn, 9.8 Marvel Spotlight number 5. At the Heritage Auction, sold for $270,000 in a 9.8 with white pages, and that's all in. That's taxes and commission and all that kind of stuff. All in $270,000 plus.
It's fucking Ghost Rider, man. I'm
Nick
sorry,
Cage, bro. You can't beat that.
It's because he's buying all of them.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe that is actually the case. But no, it's one thing if that's Spider-Man, if that's Wolverine, but it's fucking Ghost Rider. I like Ghost Rider. I like Ghost Rider just fine. I think he's a great character. He's interesting.
Yeah.
I was always a bigger fan of the Danny Ketch era than the Johnny Blaze era, but
what about the Robbie Reyes era?
That's not even Ghost Rider.
Well, okay, but
Ghost Driver.
It makes sense. Makes sense. But I want to add. It's one of only 4 9.8s that have been graded. There's only 4 of them. Only two of them have white pages, so it's one of 2 there, and it's the only one that has perfect centering on the cover.
I get all that. I mean, but look, at some point, it's not just an issue of how perfect your representation of that comic is. It's what that comic is too. I mean, you might as well hey, here's a Sleepwalker number 9. Nothing happens in it, but it's fucking perfect. Let's sell it for $250,000. Nobody cares. Yeah. I mean, I understand that Ghost Rider is more important than a random issue of 90s Drek, but still, it doesn't matter how small this is, and this is where I think it is getting into a rich man's game.
Yeah,
because now it's just I want to have the most perfect copy of this possibly available. Doesn't matter whether or not, like, its relative importance in comics and current, the current comic market, that seems to be almost a secondary thought. I could see that for a Hulk 181. I could see that for a Fantastic Four 48 or something like that. But it's Ghost Rider. I mean, he's really not that centrally important.
Well, Pele, with all these rich investors, collectors, speculators coming in and grabbing up the top shelf, the top tier of these comic books, the people that want them are still going to want them that have less money. They have to just go down in grade and fight it out between themselves, and it becomes a bloodbath, and you definitely end up with a lot of have-nots.
Well, the good news on that is it is not nearly as difficult to find in low grade, in mid-grade and low grade. And with that fact, that's the majority of them exist at a 6.5 or below. Okay, that vast majority of them. So, 1.5, you can find one for $425 if you're patient. That's the 90-day moving average.
That's still
a lot of money for a comic book.
That's still a lot of money for a first appearance of Ghost Rider.
Right.
Again, I'm still stuck on this. Like, yeah. I mean,
that's not what the conversation is, Doc. We're talking about our normal people, normal collectors being weeded out of the hobby and being set by the wayside that might actually have interest in these characters because people that don't even know what they're buying are coming in and seeing them as investments.
Yep. Now, another good example is Ghost Rider #1. If you can't afford the first appearance, which a lot of people can't, the next one to go to would be Ghost Rider #1, and you got Ghost Rider #1. That's not nearly as bad. Take a guess. 6.0. What do you think? Moving average.
Are we talking graded or slabbed? I mean, I don't know what four. Well, let's say.
I was going to say 4,500, but I was
going to say 450.
But you get a 5.0 with perfectly presentable, nice copy, $400.
Okay.
Well, yeah, perfect.
Go below that to a 3.5, $200. That's when it starts getting into okay. Most collectors, I think that what I know of most normal Joe collectors out there, would you hit that $400 to $500 range is when they sweat. And they're going, I can't do that. They're like, I just really can't. Now I'm talking about these are regular collectors, not just guy off the street wants a comic or just a reader of Ghost Rider who wants a comic. What's a nice comic? I think that's probably about right, the $400 to $500 range. And then you got the people that are the well-heeled professionals and stuff like that, and you get over 1,000, stuff like that, and they start $1,000, and they start backing off. So on these, I mean, used to be that I would concede that the golden age and the blue chip silver age books were a rich man's game. That's unless you're patient and you want to do the trade up thing and you want to build up and then trade some books, or sell some smaller books to get more money to buy the bigger books, and that takes that's a process. That takes
you need to go to estate auctions and see if you can find some of that stuff raw on accident.
Yeah, well, that's still luck.
Oops.
It does help, and it does happen. But most of the time now with the state auctions, I'll just divert real quick on this since you mentioned it. With the state auctions, nowadays the conservator hands it over to consultants on estates like that, and they go to Heritage and just say, here, get us the best price you can now.
American Pickers just ruined it for all of us.
And I mean, the way to find that kind of stuff is just to find somebody that just wants to sell it as quick as they can. But now, nowadays, they want everything, want every dollar for it. So
yeah, you can't blame them.
Yeah, and people come in selling comics all the time. Well, I saw what it sold on eBay or what it was asked for on eBay, and You got some lofty expectations if you're not going to put it up there yourself.
Oh yeah, it had that happen this last week. Dude walked in, and he had a really, really nice Tomb of Dracula #10. First appearance of Blade. It was a 6.5. He's like, what do you give me? He's like, I said, well, what do you want for it? What do you want? He just sits there for a second. He's like, oh, let me think about this. Well, it's on eBay for $2,400. How about $2,200?
Leave a little meat on the bone for you there, Pele.
Yeah. Well, after I explained to him that, this isn't eBay. You're going to sell it on eBay, you're going to pay a 10% fee. You're going to sell it, you're going to have to probably go through PayPal. Well, that's another 8%. That's another 8% fee. Insurance, sales tax, all that kind of stuff, which the buyer pays the sales tax, not you. And
then you don't get your money for 30 or 90 days.
It can be a wait. It depends on how good your account is in standing.
Yeah, but if you're not a comic seller, then you're waiting 30 to 90 days. That's my point. For like regular Joe Schmo off the street wanting to sell something on eBay, but doesn't normally sell everything.
And they don't even know how to do it either, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he just kind of we talked it out. And I said, well, is there anything in the shop? What is anything in the shop you need?
Nice.
Anything other stuff you need? And he's like, well, yeah, I really like that Psylocke statue. Just sideshow statue I had. And I was like, yeah, well, that's $400. We can work that out, And so, yeah, we worked out a good deal. It's more than I normally would want to pay. But pressable defects. The book had almost all pressable defects. So I think that I crack it, get a 9.0 out of it, I'll be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think but I mean, that is a good point on the issue of, is it a rich man's game? I mean, even the regular guy on the street at this point is demanding top dollar on their stuff, and
everybody has access to information.
Well, yeah, everybody does have access to the information. That's where I kind of love and hate things like Key Collector, because the guy that just started doing it yesterday is equally accessible to the same knowledge that is taking me 35 years to accumulate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to have to remember it up here.
Yes.
And now I can't keep up with this thing here.
Yes. and that impacts it a lot, because you end up in a lot of good ways. The access of information is widening the potential buyer pool and potential seller pool.
But the prices are kind of narrowing it down there, Doc, because I'm seeing a lot of people, viewers of the channel, they're lamenting the fact that they didn't get a key issue that they were looking at for the last 5 years, because now it's completely out of reach, seemingly forever.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It is, maybe,
but they can work on it. Like I said, it can take years sometimes to build up to that. I've got a customer's mail carrier. He's got one of the most awesome Superman collections and Green Lantern and Superman collections I've ever seen. And he's a mail carrier. He makes $60,000 a year. He's just worked on it for 35, 40 years. So
additionally, see, whenever you hit situations like this where, that key that you were watching for the last 5 years, and you watched it slip through your grasp.
ASM 300 for you.
Oh yeah. I took the shot. I took the shot on a lot of my other like key books and grail books, and it's paid off for me pretty well. But at the same time, I could have sat there and been like, well, that AF-15 that I sold when I bought my house, I'd really like to get another one of those back. And I could have sat there saving for that and skipped passed on buying my X-Men 1 and buying my Hulk 181 and buying a couple of the other keys that I bought over the last few years. In which case now instead of one key just remaining out of reach in that AF-15, I would have had like 5 other keys that have grown out of reach. So I to those people, I say, you know what? Then hit those cheap like discount ones and worry about the big ones later.
Well, that's why I want to talk about to Pele. Do you see people getting frustrated and kind of like what they're doing with new comics, where they're saying, screw this, I don't feel like the value's here, I'm going to back issue bins, buying the back issue stuff that I liked before? Are people saying, screw this, I'll go invest in another hobby? Or are they finding other places to strategically, collect and go find things that maybe they liked as a kid and that's maybe more affordable?
Most of the time, what happens is, what I've noticed, you've got people that they want the big keys, of course, Bronze Age, Silver Age keys. They've passed them by, so they're going to alternatives. They're going to like say, okay, well, I can't afford those, but I can afford the 70s, early 80s Moon Knight run.
Or I get an entire collection of Valiant comics. Very attainable.
I can go out and work on the Spawn run, before those get out of hand. So, some of those books that had the really short, really, really small production numbers are getting up to $150, $200, $250 now. So, they're looking at alternatives in the hobby, and I'll tell you what, they're going to start buying those now. 20, 30 years, those are going to be unobtainable for the next generation of collectors. So,
I think it goes by faster than that. I think in the 5 years, people catch up to them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, because
all the cycle just gets faster and faster, right?
Well, there's been a time where if things had kept going at the rate they were in the late 90s, we'd be much higher than we are now. And there are lulls.
There's got to be a market correction, is what you're saying.
There's dead periods. There are crashes. We had a bad crash at that time, and it was like,
I picked up a bunch of key books in the early 2000s for cheap, like giant sized X-Men #1 for $80, and X-Men 101 for like $50.
Mm-hmm.
I picked up a bunch of key books for relatively cheap whenever those market corrections do have. And now I'm sitting here going, well, I could sell some of these, and here, this stack of 5 books is like $25,000 now.
Listen, Doc, what you should do is understand that other people missed out on the opportunity and just give them a small markup and give them a good deal.
No, I'm not even talking about that.
I'm just dicking around with you.
Oh, I know. I guess my point here is, though, that I took advantage of shit that was cheap. And there's a lot of those. Yeah, there's a lot of those that are still out there right now that you can hop on.
Yeah, I remember there was a dealer, well, another comic shop here locally, said, I will not be controlled by people. I will not be controlled by the high prices, and I'm going to offer my customers great, fair deals and low prices and stuff. And I was like, well, that's cool. That's great.
eBay is going to love you.
You do that. And I said, dude, you do that. That's fine. He used to take books that would normally, book value $200. You could find them there for like $70, $80.
Boom.
And he's like, yeah, I'm sticking it to the man, and my customers are going to get great prices on key comics. And they were just buying them and turning around and selling them on eBay. And because he and telling them later on that, oh no, I love that comic. It's still in my collection. No, they're not. They went to me across the street, figuratively across the street, and sold the book the next day, for a $50 profit. I've got the comic right here, and I showed it to him, and he's like, it just crushed him.
Mumble.
I mean, that's a great way to blow through your entire inventory. I mean,
he did.
You might as well have just put a big, Manhattan electronics store going out of business sale sign on the door.
Yeah, he was in business and out of business within a year.
Wow,
that's crazy. So. But apparently, I do see the frustration. people feel like they're being priced out of the hobby. Me personally, I am not the collector that you guys are. I don't deal with collectors like you guys do. You're retailers, and Doc has his own impressive collection. If it was me, I would be like, well, I really like Green Lantern. I can go work on a Green Lantern run. There's probably a few key issues in there, but for the most part, I can probably, over time, get her done. You know?
Yeah. Green Lantern Silver Age right now is Silver Age Green Lantern, especially the Silver Age series, the showcase Green Lantern appearances are pretty pricey, but you can get into the series itself cheap. It's one of the only series that has not really taken off yet. So, look at things like that. Marvel right now, Marvel key comics are rich man's game. Yeah, I'll just say that. Marvel keys in the Silver Bronze Age, that's even into the Copper Age, that's getting into some money if you want anything that's, isn't like beat all
high grades and key appearances, you mean, mostly, right?
Yeah.
So Pele, what you're saying is if you're looking for strategic value and you're the Marvel guy, you might need to turn your eye over to DC Comics, and maybe some of those characters, outside of Batman and Superman, might be a little bit more in your price range and might have some better bargains out there for you to go in if you're looking to invest or really build up your collection.
If you're looking to invest, but you can always buy the non-keys. Non-keys are still a comparatively great bargain, even Silver Age. So Silver Age Amazing Spider-Man non-keys, you can pick them up. They look nice. $40, $50, and that's much more reasonable. And you're still getting an Amazing Spider-Man with a 12-cent cover.
Additionally, I mean, if you do go over and start picking up some of those other books, that are undervalued currently, like something like Silver Age Green Lantern, 5 years from now, you may get a hot period where they start taking off. You end up with, as Pele said earlier, taking that long game approach, where maybe the thing that you really want is going to plateau, because it does.
And the other thing in stock, if you love the character, it's not going to feel like an albatross because you have a bunch of comic books of characters that you love.
Exactly.
It's not gonna feel like you just lost money.
But you could play, kind of like that game of taking a paper clip and trading your way all the way up to a Ferrari. Yeah. I mean, you can do it eventually. It's just a matter of how long it takes.
Yeah.
And you could do that even now in comics. But I would say for anything that is out of your price range now, focus on the stuff that is. Buy it up before it reaches that point, and then you could focus on that big key later.
Yeah.
It feels like Marvel's pretty overpriced right now, or at least it's at the top of the heap. When you look at DC, are there any characters there or any eras that you think, that's a nice spot to be in if you're a DC collector?
For DC, So we were talking about how the Silver Age books, you can probably get into them and probably afford them, unless there's like specific key issues. Maybe like, during the Neil Adams Batman stuff, it might be a little bit more expensive, or maybe even those Green Lantern issues. I mean, they're not obscene, but there's a few of those that are going to be really expensive. But DC, you can you can go to conventions, and a lot of times at dealers that have a bunch of it, they'll be like Silver Age DC half off. These are $100 books that you're going to be able to get for $50. Maybe even cheaper. It doesn't move as much, unfortunately. They're Silver Age again, unless we're talking keys or specific things. We've seen Booster Gold doing really, really well lately.
Yeah.
As far as people. I mean, we're talking about not a high circulation, a character that gets in everybody's business these days, so he's important. And it was a fun run, not a great run, but a fun run, and not everybody got to experience it also, and they're not really collecting the back issues in collections, so things like that. Obviously, you got your new Teen Titans with Perez and Wolfman, and first appearance of Deathstroke and Cyborg and all that other stuff. So I think those are probably the best ones. There was a little bit of heat with Superman with the John Byrne run when he was doing Bloodsport. Supposedly he's going to be in a movie, or they were talking about that. So you can find things within that time period. I think the 80s, DC, probably post-Crisis. These are the books you should be looking at probably if you have any inclination to buy DC comic books.
Pele, why does it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Why does it feel like DC comics are kind of a relative bargain compared to Marvel?
MCU cachet. You've got a couple points. One, there's more of a cultural impact in the modern day from Marvel, and the MCU hit like a hammer, and a lot of people have just you've got Amazing Spider-Man movies have been consistent. It just seems to be more cultural awareness around Marvel characters.
Do you think the fact that like Disney Plus, which has an enormous subscription subscriber base compared to HBO Max, we know we're going to get DC shows coming on HBO Max. We got Marvel shows coming on Disney Plus. That even gets the word out and like the awareness of these characters and events even higher, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Doc?
Well, I was actually going to say one of the reasons why Marvel Silver Age versus DC Silver Age, there's such a huge disparity. A lot of DC's major creations came out of the Golden Age. Mm-hmm. You had some of their legacy characters that showed up in the Silver Age, but most of their core showed up either originated in the Golden Age or in the Copper Age. So the Silver Age DC, it doesn't take itself as seriously as Marvel. Silver Age, Marvel you had this huge creative boom where there was new stuff that's important to this day getting dumped into and added to the universe on a almost weekly basis, versus DC, where most of their major creations came out in the previous age or the following age. If you look at DC in the Silver Age, there's not a lot of material to really draw on. Mm-hmm. It's not as important for, when it comes to, if we're going to look at the cultural impact of film and TV, there's not a lot to draw on there to really use, because there was a lot of that hokiness to Silver Age DC that doesn't really translate as well. And there's not a lot of hugely important...
Translated to Adam West Batman.
I understand that, but at the same time, they had to eventually abandon that in the comics too.
Yes,
for serious, film and shared universe on screen, and both big and small, I don't think there's a lot of material to really draw on out of that's good speculator investments, that's good real, like, you don't got a lot of great first appearances. You
have is like introduction of a different type of kryptonite or something like that.
Yeah, you
have a lot of appearance of Earth 3 Crime Syndicate.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's not. But they're derivatives. Derivatives don't have the same kind of cachet.
I just did a retrospective on those things, and they're in the same era as like some of the really big Marvel like great runs of all time. They feel like they're written for two different audiences. You can see that the DC stuff is still written like for 8 to 12-year-olds, and then the Marvel stuff is like for 12-year-old, like up into teenage, even early 20 stuff.
Yeah,
it's much more silly. Let's put it that way.
It is. It's silly, and there's not a lot. So, and as a result,
it's really fun.
Yeah, in like one little story, it's like, wow, this is really fun. Yeah. But if you look at the entirety of like the DC line, it was such nonsense during that time.
That's where Green Lantern was a little bit different. It was more
Flash was a little different also, but even still, he could have a big head anytime,
Yeah, you had Superman was just completely goofy ass stuff. You know, you had stuff like Lois.
Those are great covers, though. I mean, I'm telling you, people,
they are.
It's like it's like fun, nostalgic stuff from a time you probably weren't alive, and you can look back on them, and the stories inside are whack, also.
Yeah.
But you do get that, first appearance of Ra's al Ghul kind of stuff every once in a while.
Well, that was more of the Bronze. That's when things changed. It was a tonal shift there with DC, in the early 70s that you got. Then it started getting darker again, and then you had Neil Adams covers, and you had, oh my God, that's when everything shifted, and DC said, okay, we're going to start taking our brand seriously.
Yeah, because I mean, you can look at, say, like Fantastic Four in the Silver Age, and the amount of just original shit that ended up in that first 50, 60. Well, that first 50, 60 issues of it, and you can't compare a single thing in DC. I don't think all of the Silver Age in DC had as much original idea as maybe 50, 60 issues of Fantastic Four did.
Well, it's all getting run through by like an editor's desk, saying, like Julia Schwartz is saying, oh, well, you need to have this on the cover to sell stuff. I have to have either a dichotomy of like a post-apocalyptic land or a giant gorilla or something like that.
In fairness, Doc, those first 50 issues of Fantastic Four are literally still driving the entire MCU or the entire Marvel Comics universe in every other title besides Fantastic Four.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason, they've just abandoned all that stuff.
Oh, I get that, but I
heard you say that.
I'm just saying you had 50, 60 issues there that did more than the entirety of the Silver Age of DC.
Jack Kirby at his creative apex.
Another thing about DC, and I was listening to the aficionados yesterday, and Doc was saying that he's a Marvel guy. And
he's a mark. He's a mark, sir.
A Marvel mark, yeah, MM.
Yep.
A Merry Marvel Mark zombie.
Yes.
Martian zombie. No, just joking. But I knew lots of people when I was a kid in high school. DC was your granddad's or even your father's comic book company. And I think one of the reasons is like Kurt Swan did Superman for like 40 years, Jim Aparo was on Batman forever. And it's like Marvel went and got Gil Kane to do Spider-Man. But when DC has Gil Kane, it's like, we have Gil Kane. We've got this person. And Marvel took this guy. And he's exciting,
fantastic.
Pardon me?
Gil Kane Batman looks fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, look, and it's the same thing, Gene Colan, but he's a star when he's over at Marvel doing Doctor Strange or doing Daredevil. But when he's over at Batman in the 80s was even still, regardless of how dark you can make it, we didn't care. It was kind of a boring title. And it's just one of those things. DC always has that stigma. It's not as exciting as Marvel. And even today, when we're looking at back issue prices or people buying back issues, because I've got an online store full of DC books that you would drool over if you were interested in them, but it's DC, Yeah.
Yeah, you have. There's some shockers in there as far as people are like, it's worth that much, and that's getting to the point with DC's horror, House of Mystery, House of Secrets. There's some shockers in the House of Secrets. 92 is not an inexpensive book. First appearance of Swamp Thing. It's a very expensive book, and anything in mid grade to high grade. And even in low grade now, 3.5s are getting close to $1,000. There's some one-offs and two-offs and three-offs, stuff like that. But for the most part, though, DC is still the bargain title.
I want to jump off that horror thing really quick. DC, you got to go for Constantine's first appearance. Was that like Swamp Thing 37, 38? Can't remember.
37.
Yeah, and if you can't afford that one because it is expensive.
Swamp Thing 25, which is his first cameo.
And Swamp Thing 50, the first Justice League Dark. And stuff like that. But get Swamp Thing, get Hellblazer. Those are really good titles that I think are
What's that Swamp Thing? You're talking about one of the 2 or 3 greatest runs in DC history?
Yeah, well, it is, and
It is.
you can go
No doubt.
Len Wein, Bernie Wrightson, or you can go the Alan Moore route too. Or believe it or not, there's all that Nestor Redondo stuff that people want to like forget in between, and great Swamp Thing horror stuff for sure.
So good. And it's got a great 80s movie that everyone forgot about that's just
Boom.
classic.
I never forget anything with Adrian Barbeau in it.
Oh, yeah. And her Apex. It was a precursor for the Toxic Avenger, I tell you.
For sure.
So, it's too bad, Pele, because in my opinion, I'm more of a DC mark, and I think DC has the greater characters. But you could tell, like, in the Silver Age, the storytelling quality is just, it's different.
Yeah.
There's some really good stuff with DC, and I love the Gardner Fox stuff when he's like coming back and doing really weird shit. But it's just got a different tonal quality to it.
It comes down to this: are you a magic guy or are you a technology guy? Because Marvel tried to explain things with technology. You know, of course, it's bunk. You know,
Mumbo jumbo is what I call
no matter what you try to say with Pym particles, you know, none of that makes any sense. But it was still called technology. You know, they tried to say it's like Star Trek type technology. You know, this is technology, and DC just said no, it's just magic. It's just magic. It's all just magic, and you know, and all this kind of stuff. And so, are you a tech guy? Are you Star Trek? Or are you Star Wars? You know, are you know? And it's
Star Wars.
And you know, Star Wars is more magic. You know, the Force and everything like that. In Star Trek, there's very little that isn't like tries to have a technical explanation. So it comes
Marvel's
down to that
also
with
more
DC and Marvel
gimmick
too.
also.
Yeah, they are. They're more gimmicky. They, you know, they're more kind of explosive, boom, pow, pow, you know, and they'll have the greater swings as far as storylines are concerned.
It's funny because like even today, you know, with this as much bad stuff that Marvel puts out, it still has that excitement more than any other company. You know, like you have the belief that it's going to be bigger. That you know, like Marvel will let you down every single time, probably.
My belief is it should be bigger most of the time.
Exactly.
You know why? Because Marvel is, you know, Barry Bonds or one of those types, and DC is a solid base hit guy.
DC is Babe Ruth. Don't sell them short, Doc.
That's only because they've been around so long.
Yeah, I mean, but no,
they drew a no hitter and they had the home run record, Doc. But don't be
look.
like that.
My point is, it's the guy that's going to hit constantly. He's always going to get on base. He's gonna.
He just called DC the Tony Gwynn of comics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tony Gwynn's the greatest San Diego player ever.
But if you look at it, then yeah, because Barry Bonds struck out far more times, but he ends up as the quote more exciting player.
Well, here,
actually, you're talking about Mark McGwire. Barry Bonds actually like has the walk record and stuff like that. You want to talk about striking out? You want to talk about Mark McGwire?
Let me put a bow on this. Let me put a bow on this. Nice, pretty little bow. All right, $270,000. Marvel Spotlight #5. First appearance of Ghost Rider. Crazy amount of money. Marvel comic. All right, and the same auction, Action Comics #1, CGC 5.5, conserved. That's not restored. It's conserved, which means it has a little bit of structural work done on it to make it look better. The Marvel Spotlight #5 outsold the Action Comics #1 in that auction by $30,000.
That's stupid.
But I'm telling you, that's the difference. Marvel fans are nuts.
Like at a high grade is like you're talking $4 million or something crazy.
Oh yeah, that's well, you know, the best one out there I think is 9.0. There might be a 9.2 floating around somewhere of Action 1. You know, if it went up for sale at 20 million, 25.
Well, the
whatever.
best one out there isn't graded, correct? Because it was part of that collection in Colorado that Chuck
the Mile High collection.
Had. Yeah,
it's not been graded, or if it has been graded, it's not listed. Some people say it has been graded, so but it's not listed, and I don't know why that would be, but
you know why? Because he probably took it down there, got them to grade it, and then just didn't have them encapsulate it.
Yeah,
but he kept it in a glass case in his shop until he sold it to that guy. I think he was a Middle Eastern man.
Or it got an 8.0 or an 8.5.
Yeah,
he
that's
doesn't
right.
want people to know.
Talk about it.
You know,
Well, that
and
thing,
it's
it was
a beautiful
private
book,
auction.
but
We don't even know the price, but apparently it was quite substantial.
yeah, it's biblical. But you know, but still, I'm talking about with the current sizzle right now around Marvel. That's just nuts, and it really shouldn't be that way. And there's no way Marvel Spotlight number 5 and a 9.8 should outsell an Action Comics number 1 in practically any grade.
Nick Cage, it's the
period.
Nick Cage effect, Doc.
Yeah.
No,
It is.
I don't.
Just
I
waiting
don't-
for Con Air comic.
I don't care if Nick Cage himself bought it.
What's
For
the
that
first
much.
appearance of Big Daddy going for these days?
I don't care if he delivers it. I don't care
No,
if he fucking
Nick
delivers
Cage
it.
is buying them all.
Yes.
That's what it is. And that's the reason. Yeah, he's cornering the market on all Ghost Rider.
And then he's gonna just flood it.
Well, either that or he's going to be like, you're going to finally give me that chance to make another movie of it, right?
I'll be
I
honest,
think he's
Pele,
And me in this movie.
with what you're saying here, it almost feels like the Marvel prices might be built on a house of cards waiting to collapse. If
There
the
you
MCU cannot keep up the consumer enthusiasm for the products that they're putting out. And I'll be honest, it felt like a lot of people like WandaVision to a degree. People were more skeptical, I think, by the end of Falcon Winter Soldier. And I'll be honest, after issue 2 or episode 2 of Loki, I'm going, what's happening here? This is pretty boring. It sounds like Black Widow is going to be the lowest performing MCU movie in quite some time.
Yep. Loki, and very few people are really excited about Thor: Love and Thunder.
No.
You know, except for the Wakandans, you know, on Twitter, you know, who are like, oh my god.
There's a lot of people, though, Pele, that only grew up with Marvel movies. I just encountered one. And in fact, even her father coming in, the only thing he knew less about comics than the young woman did, the young girl. But most of her knowledge is MCU. And only now I was like, all right, well, let's sell you this instead, you know, so you can get a little bit more
I got some
information.
crap I can't get rid of. It's going to be perfect for you.
Exactly. What, you like Black Widow? Well, you should check out these old Avengers issues.
So,
you know,
and
that type of thing.
I'm wondering what happens when the gas, you know, when the tank runs out, you know, as far as the MCU is concerned. You know, when is the, you know, is it musical chairs? The music stops, you know, you're kind of stuck with what you got, you know, or is there more meat on the bone? It's more of a cultural significance than what some people suspect it is.
Are people going out and seeing, well, let's say people are going out and seeing movies. So let's just pretend right now.
According to A Quiet Place 2, they are.
Okay, very good.
Very well.
All right. So people are actually going out and seeing movies now. A Marvel movie is going to come out all the time. The question I have is, will people have comic book movie fatigue like in their ages, 15 to 25? Like a lot of people kind of fall out of comics and then get back into comics. Will they be doing that with the movies also, I wonder? Or is it just another movie and I might as well go see it? You know,
I don't think so. I think it won't be as fatigue as far, because I know I can watch anything.
It's like
great.
you kind of lose interest as you start wanting to score and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly.
No, I don't think so. But I do think that if it's not consistently good like it was before when we had the Infinity War and we had the Endgame, if it's not what it was before, then they're going to have the fatigue because people are like, well, this isn't good. This isn't as good as what I'm used to.
I'm going to be honest, Doc. If they could ever start consistently making video games and translate them into movies, that people, when they go to them, they came out with a positive experience, which they haven't been able to do that yet. There's an entire generation that would probably choose that over comic book movies.
Oh God, yeah. You know, Resident Evil wasn't even all that great as a franchise.
The first one was bearable.
Yeah, the first one was bearable. The rest of them, I mean, they were fun kind of wastes of time, but they didn't have any connection to the video games. If they would have been able to capitalize on the video game fandom other than just Mia Jovovich looking hot, kicking ass, Jesus Christ. I think it's Jovovich. But regardless,
we'll find out later for the people at home.
other than that, like, if they could have really capitalized on that, they would have blown. I mean, you could have a goddamn Kirby movie that, if it was true to the source, or a Kubert movie that would beat a lot of comic book movies, because that's how much cultural relevance video games have over comics in general.
It's almost like video games being adapted, or like comic book properties, like in the 80s up through until you get to Blade.
Why are video game movies so biblically bad? I mean,
that's what I'm saying. They can't adapt, and they don't take the video games themselves seriously. So that's why you get like your Super Mario Brothers, one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, I was about to say, Bob Hoskins.
Cool. What was the other one? You got Street Fighter, that was just terrible. Doom. They don't know how to
kill a man.
Translate it.
Even World of Warcraft,
great actor.
Even the Warcraft movie, it was like,
supposedly Duncan, whatever his name, likes Warcraft, and that movie sucked.
Well, I think what it comes down to is it's the same thing that pre-MCU.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Had is that the producers and the directors are scared.
We're in the steel phase.
It's not that they're scared of the comic book tropes. They're scared of the source material, so they try to kind of borrow from the
Hollywood treatment.
Yes.
Yeah, they basically make generic action movie A and just put a skin on it of this, video game or comic book that you know.
You remember Ang Lee's Hulk, right?
Yeah.
Where he tried to honor the source material too much, where it was like in video or
where they did
panels and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, this is stupid. Get this out of here.
Like, the whole point is, we don't care about the, if there's maybe 80, or if there's like 5 panels per page, we'd be perfectly fine with a 110-page comic book, but it's easier to print it in 22 and just have 5 panels on a page. It doesn't need to look with like panels, but my point is the source material, they're scared of it. They're just straight up scared of it. And until you get a producer like Kevin Feige, at least early Kevin Feige, involved with, say, a Resident Evil franchise, or a Final Fantasy franchise, or a Mario Brothers franchise.
Sonic looks good though.
Yes. Sonic was a standout. Sonic is a standout.
And now let's see about Sonic 2. If you could send Sonic to his world, and you actually made a movie in his world that felt like the video game. Yes, because they always try to earthify it.
Okay, we're no video game channel. No video game channel.
No, what I'm just saying is there is a genre waiting to overtake comic books that probably has a bigger consumer base waiting for it to arrive.
Okay, that's fine. But what would happen with, what do you think, Doc, will happen with the comic collecting market when the MCU just goes bust?
Your Ultra keys, your AF-15s, Action 1, Detective 27, the mega ultra top of the heap keys, those aren't really going to be terribly affected. You'll see a little bit of it, but I don't expect to see them be terribly affected at all. It's the D-list keys, the keys that everybody has.
Appearance of Ghost Rider.
No,
I'm talking below that. I'm talking about like those random first appearance of this character that might show up, like that fucking Web of Spider-Man that came out this week, where it was the first appearance of a character that was already in a movie 10 years ago that nobody gives a shit about. But in comic book form, that kind of shit is over. That's just straight over.
I think so.
Do you think it affects Iron Man though?
I don't know if it affects
a lot of his popularity is kind of built up by the MCU.
But at the same time, he's already gone. So Tony Stark's gone. He won't be affected by this. He will get kind of a pass on it.
Because I'll tell you what, he's still popular.
Yeah,
Iron Man number 1 is still climbing in value, despite the fact that Robert Downey Jr. is never coming back, supposedly.
It's the characters that are still in the Marvel the MCU, that would still be active, they'll get the stink on them.
Thor's just right for it.
He
He's about
is.
to get destroyed by Love and Thunder.
It could be. I mean, look, there's already Marvel, the MCU already has like a kind of a consumer psychology hurdle that they really need to climb over right now. The majority of consumers out there mentally checked out after Endgame.
Yeah.
And like they're down to continue, but you gotta sell them all over again. And that's gonna be hard. Because they're fine with letting Endgame being their checkout point, their jumping off point. The same way that, you know, we talk about it with new number ones in comics where, well, yeah, it's a jumping on point for new readers, but it's almost always a jumping off point for existing readers. And almost always you lose more old readers than you gain in new readers.
Uel?
Yeah, well, he's focusing on Fantastic Four, Kevin Feige, from what I understand. And we already said that everything goes, or Wes has already said that everything starts and ends basically with the Fantastic Four. And finally, they're going to get the treatment. So those would be the books at Marvel I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, you got the Kree Scroll stuff that you could introduce a little bit
and
more.
even if those movies flop, it's still a Fantastic Four. You know what I mean?
Dr. Doom?
Yeah, exactly.
You got some heavy hitters waiting to be explored.
And then, you know, you eventually you maybe have Blastar. And, you know,
Yeah. I'll
it's
tell
not
you
hard
what.
getting that issue.
Hey, we
As
already
soon
had
as-
US1 in
Yeah.
the Agents
Ooh.
of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Ooh.
There you go. I was going to make fun of US1 earlier, but I decided I opted out.
I got to it for you. Don't worry.
As soon as Galactus steps foot in the movie, as soon as Silver Surfer and Galactus step foot in the movie,
Boom.
that's going to be the next turn. You know, how they do that, how they handle that, I think will say a lot about what happens later on in the MCU and what happens to the collectible comics in the Silver Age and Bronze Age.
They
Because
should not
if-
make him an enormous cloud.
No.
No. We're talking
make this
about
thing-
big actual.
Purple and blue Galactus.
Well, it's
Earth
Avengers
Eater
Endgame
Galactus.
type stuff probably also.
Except for, but the thing is, like, and this was one of the problems that I've had so far, and I think they've already kind of overused this trope, is all of the Avengers movies ended up being gang of heroes versus giant army of things.
Yeah.
And most of them are cannon fodder. I think people want to see the, like, team of Avengers versus one opponent that's so badass they don't need an army, they are their own army, and we haven't seen that yet. So they're gonna have to, I'm concerned.
Thanos.
No, he had his own army. He
I
had
know,
an
but
army
there's one
twice.
scene where they're in the clearing and all of them came at him.
and that's the only time that it felt like I think people really got into it. Otherwise, it was just a bunch of cannon fodder.
I wouldn't mind Annihilation, Doc, so I wouldn't mind him showing up with Nihilus showing up with a bunch of aliens. Again.
I'll tell you what,
Straight out
I
the
would not cry. I would not cry if the MCU crashes and burns, you know, gets bit by the woke bug and people just kind of check out mentally and stuff. I would not cry
you're
if
looking for bargains.
I would not cry if the collectible comics industry, you know, pulled back 50%. I mean, just choke back hard, and people, like all the newer people that came in, just kind of stepped away, or some of them did, and the market reset a bit, because it's not just people wanting new bargains. Just the hype surrounding it and the frenetic pace and everything like that that's going on is just so intense that I'd really like for it to calm down personally.
It can't
And just-
sustain itself is really what I'm feeling, you know. When is it going to happen? When's this bubble going to burst, right?
Yeah.
Well, you've got Eternals. Sounds like Black Widow is not getting very good reviews right now. You've also got Shang-Chi. Really, the only surefire like hits probably are that Doctor Strange and Guardians of the Galaxy. So there's a lot of stumbling blocks within the next couple of years. Really,
There
for
are.
MCU.
There are.
And I think, though, that if you did have a little bit of a tanking on that, and then there would be a fallout on some of the B and C Like you'd have a little bit of effect on the B and C tier keys. The D tier are going to be down. Like you get down to the Z tier of like the first appearance of Paste Pot Pete, and
that's actually crazy.
That's really
a crazy
enough.
one. That's Strange Tales number 110 because it's the same as first appearance of Doctor Strange.
I know, but my point is
You're not buying it for Paste Pot Pete.
No, you're not buying it for Paste Pot Pete.
yeah, but I guess what you might have. Okay, so some of the newer, less comic people that are more investor people might dip out, but I think it'll open the door to a lot of. There's going to be a lot of that pent up. I haven't been able to afford this. I haven't been able to afford this because of the current situation.
Yeah.
That if you had a overnight or nearly overnight 50% reduction, 25% reduction, 40% reduction in prices for some keys, you'd end up seeing a feeding frenzy.
Yeah, I think so. I think
let me ask you a question. When the bubble bursts, will we see Amazing Spider-Man 300 go down?
Yes, because there's so many damn copies out there. And
Significantly, do you think?
no, not huge, not hugely. I think that's one of those books that has a little bit of an insulator around it because it's so it's Todd McFarlane. It is so iconic. You could probably see a 25% decrease. But at high grade, 9.4 and above, it's still a tricky book to get to find. You can find them all day long. In the 7 to 8s in raw. Fine copies. Go ahead, Doc.
We need to find a way to manipulate the market into tanking ASM 300 so that about a 9.8 is, I don't know, in the $500 range, and then I just buy all
500.
Let's work on this. We need to manipulate the market here.
I'll do that. I'll do that when it hits 2,000. So I'll do that when it hits 2,000.
We'll start throwing mud. Something horrible happened with Todd McFarlane recently, and nobody can handle that book anymore.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's radioactive.
Canceled. Yeah, exactly.
It's radioactive. Yeah.
All right, fellas, are we about done with talking about what would happen if the MCU itself actually clapped and how it would affect the comic collecting hobby?
Yep.
It'd make it more
I think
real.
so. Yeah, it's we could probably talk about it for another 2 hours, but yeah.
Well, we could have talked about video games movies for another 2 hours, but somebody didn't want us to.
Well, that's not a video game show.
I know. I was just saying, there are other genres waiting to replace comic books if they don't keep their act straight.
I'm waiting for the collectible card movies that will come out. We've
like
seen Mars
fucking
Attacks
Yu-Gi-Oh?
before, but yeah, sure. Well, not even Yu-Gi-Oh.
I saw
I
Garbage
was thinking
Pail
like
Kids
Cabbage
the movie.
Patch Kids and stuff like that.
Have you seen Garbage Pail Kids the movie?
Not Garbage Pail. That's the one I meant.
That's
Yes,
already
I
a
know
movie.
of it. I have not seen
I
it.
know of it, but I've not seen it. No.
It's been
It's amazing.
30 years since I've seen it.
Maybe it's time for Beanie Babies to make a comeback. We could do a
there's gonna be
CGC
a
Slab
Tetris
Beanie
movie, but-
Baby show.
Actually, Beanie Babies did kind of pop up a bit, and it did recover a little bit in the collectibles boom. So
We are not talking about this.
No, we're not.
Have you ever had a Beanie Baby, Doc?
No.
I think I had
I
one
never-
once, but my dog ripped it up.
My wife's got about 2 or 3 dozen of them.
They're hard to keep clean.
Yeah.
Once they make a Pops movie or whatever, what are those stupid?
Yeah, the Funko Pops.
That's going to be the next iteration of the Lego movie. It's going to be
Sure thing.
Funko Pops the movie.
I can't believe they haven't
characters
worked
running
on
around
that.
everywhere.
This should be cartoons or something.
It's the same animation style. It'd work pretty much perfectly to.
Hey, they already got all the licenses.
Yeah.
Add pop vinyls into tags.
All right, fellas. So let's do a little speed round. We're going to talk about some bargain indie comics that we think are undervalued, appreciated. I don't know if this is an indie comic, but I'm going to go with it because I just read that Justice League, was it 21? It was the Icicle. He was cool. So I'm saying first appearance of the Icicle, you can get it for $125 in good grade 2.0. It's All American Comics 90. Huh? What do you think about that one?
I'm
The
gonna look it
Icicle was
up.
dope.
When did this come out? 48?
1947.
47. I was close.
What number is that?
God, I was
Number
close.
what?
Scary.
Number 90.
All right, I'll look it up afterwards.
Record sale $2,700.
All right.
It's still pretty affordable. Is All American Comics technically
Cheap.
indie
Probably
Pele?
not.
No, I think because DC bought the rights.
Oh, well,
So.
I guess I ruined the speed route already.
No, you're good.
Doc, what are you
Starting off.
recommending? What do you think's a good value? And sell us on it.
You know what? I would say some of Ed Brubaker's, like Criminal. Pretty much all of the first volume of Criminal, whenever it was still done through Icon Comics at Marvel. I have a sneaking suspicion Ed is going to eventually, because all of his books are kind of interconnected, all the Criminal titles, and I got a sneaking suspicion he's eventually going to get a TV deal for, basically, I mean, it would fit perfectly in there. He's
already got a show on Amazon, so
he does.
Not far-fetched.
Yeah, he can, and I think that it has a lot of potential upside, and it's a cheap book. You can get it for maybe $10.
Multi-generational crime noir translates pretty well to streaming.
Yeah, it does. You could do it on a cheap budget. You can
And
run
it's a
it
fucking
for
good book.
Yeah, you can run it for fucking ever. And it fits into that kind of police procedural style, easily adapted into television.
But it's a criminal procedural, Doc.
It is. It'd be like a reverse. It'd be a criminal procedural. So kind of like The Blacklist. It would fit into that genre. And I think, especially since The Blacklist is going to be coming up to an end soon, I would assume so. I think it's on like season 8 or 9 or something like that. Those shows don't last this long. And so when that ends, there's going to be somebody looking for a market to fill that in. And I think Criminal might be a good option.
All right, Uel, what are you selling? What do you think would be a good value right now in the indie comics circuit?
All right, there's 3 comics I'm going to talk about. The first one is Nice House on the Lake. They're all horror. Nice House on the Lake by DC. I think that's going to get all of the treatments we're talking about, just like Criminal could. Red Room by Ed Piskor. You can still get it for cover price if it's out there. It's already going to a second print. And Stray Dogs by Image Comics and Tony Fleeks, and I can't remember who the artist is. That's another book that is easily made for movie or TV. Think of Hannibal with Disney characters. Disney dogs, and it's the last issue's coming out this week, and it's a hot series, and it was excellent. Also, all these 3. You didn't like Nice House on Lake? I'm not sure. I thought they were all very good, and it looked good too. So these are all
8 pages in.
adaptable.
I said I can only take so many tropes, James Tynan.
I understand, but these are the tropes that I think people like to see on TV or movie screens, and these are the 3 books that I would check out.
People absolutely love that book more than I did.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about it. All right, Pele, what do you recommend?
Okay, I'm
What's your
going
thought?
back. I'm going back early. I'm going back.
You're going
early
back
in
further
the-
than me? Back further than 1947?
No, not that far back. But
Okay.
early in the 1980s, we're going back. Judge Dredd #1, Eagle Comics.
Yeah.
This book is, I think, criminally undervalued. You can get nice raw copies for like $30 to $50, and it's the first U.S. appearance of Judge Dredd. Before that, you had to go. You buy the British magazines.
2000 AD.
Awesome stuff. 2000 AD was a great magazine, but you can't find them hardly in the United States. It took me forever to build a set of them, and most people, you'll never even see one copy of it. So this book, though, first U.S. appearance of Judge Dredd. It's a great story. The cover is awesome. It's reasonably priced. You can even find them in high grade graded.
Is it Brian Bowles?
Yeah,
Brian
Brian
Boland,
Boland. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
It's Brian Boland. He does the pencils, on it.
Judge Dredd looks different when he drew him in the 2000 AD stuff. It looks amazing.
The script by John Wagner. It's a great comic, and it's way undervalued. And you can buy 9/4s for less than $100. So
it's crazy. Judge Dredd is one of the best comic book movies ever made.
Yeah, it is, hands down.
Not the Sylvester Stallone one.
No. Hands down, one of the best comic book movies ever made. By what was the actor's name? He's in Star Trek too.
The dude that was in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, he played.
Who? Viggo Mortensen?
No.
What, the elf?
No, he was the one dude's
Jesus
son
Christ.
that was in. Oh my goodness, he was the bad guy in one of the Bourne
derailing
movies.
on purpose. I'm sorry.
The guy I always.
He's a
forget
great
his name.
actor. I just always forget his name.
Yeah, he was also in the. Yeah, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about, and he's just in. It's just an awesome book. People go out and buy it, get a copy of it, because one of these days somebody's going to figure out how the low print run on this book and how
Carl Urban, my bad.
Carl Urban, and people are going to find it out, and that book's going to just go through the stratosphere. So
listen,
Judge
you can go
Dredd.
back and read that Judge Dredd stuff from 2000 AD from the 70s, and it has the best political satire, and it's all applicable to right now.
Oh,
It's
and not only
amazing.
that,
It is.
They had the whole defacing yourself for public viewing on reality show types, game show stuff.
yeah,
Going heavy through that stuff. I loved Judge Dredd. It was great. Great 80s
and
stuff.
it is what's going on right now. They
Yes.
predicted woke culture to a T all the way back in 1974.
Mostly
Is,
because of a logical conclusion.
Yeah, and it
is,
was just perfect.
Quite amazing.
Mwah.
Yeah, they had the pulse on the future generation.
Absolutely.
Kidding.
It's like when you watch Idiocracy and then you realize 10 years later, you're like, oh no.
Yeah,
It wasn't too far in the future. It was supposed to be farther away.
The cycle's just heating up. So
That's what
I
happens.
suppose-
So,
yeah.
art is made, and then we catch up to what was supposed. They're like, no, this was supposed to be a long
This is
ways
satire.
away, and we're getting there.
this is supposed to have happened after I die. I don't want this to happen in my lifetime.
So that'll basically wrap up episode 3 of Slabbed and Raw. Do we have any alibis before we wrap this up, fellas?
No,
I was here
I
doing
was
this
here.
right now. This is my alibi.
I was.
Did not commit any crimes while currently on this stream.
Well,
Not this
I
time.
don't know. I may have.
I did
I don't
talk.
know.
I did
Well,
talk
we did
about,
talk smack about Ghost Rider and Nick Cage.
and I did openly discuss manipulating the comic market.
Yes, you did,
Just to get
but
cheaper comics.
Only for Spider-Man 300, and
Only
that's a
for
worthy
Spider-Man
cause.
300, yes. You know what? This
All
is
right.
one of the cases where I'm in favor of communism. I think we all need a copy.
That's right.
Just give me one.
Not quite that many. Not
I'm
quite
out
that
of
many.
here, Doc, on that note. So I'll see
Holy
you guys
shit.
next week.
Thanks
I
for
got